5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
As Catholics, most of us know that we're supposed to pray. But why are we supposed to pray? And how exactly do we pray? That's what we're going to be talking about today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into the topic of prayer, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. And the easiest way to do so is by email. The address is ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition@sfcatholic.org. I'm joined in studio on camera by my increasingly regular guest co-host.
There was a little space there where
There was a
you
gap.
didn't like me for some reason.
No,
Yeah.
I just, got to branch up. Renee Kranz is here. Hi, Renee.
Hi, Chris.
Renee, in case somebody hasn't listened to Ignition before, in case they listened to that gap,
Right.
they're wondering,
Yes.
who
Who
is
is this
Renee
supposedly
now?
regular co-host?
Who are you, Renee?
Yes, I am Renee Kranz. I am the interim communications director for the Diocese, also the editor of the Bishop's Bulletin. Married to Ryan for 19 years. Lived in Sioux Falls for 16 years. Yeah, 16 years. And been at the diocese for 2 years.
2 years.
2 whole years.
2 years. I started the diocese the year you got married. I just realized that.
2002?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Like what month?
September 1st.
Ooh, that was a little after then.
When's your anniversary?
June 8th.
June 8th. Oh, so you just celebrated.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did.
Okay.
Yep.
We at the end of July will be 22 years.
Oh, wow.
So
Nice.
So 22 years, 3 years after that, we moved to, as the telemarketers say, Sioux Falls.
I don't think they say that.
Actually,
that's
one did.
Do you know? Okay, I have a funny story for you. When we lived out in Rapid City for 5 years, I worked for General Electric this was a terrible job, but I worked there for 4 years, but sold service contracts for appliances. Ew. We would get phone calls in from all over the country, and not even just once, but many times we'd be like, "Oh, do you guys still?" When they find out we're in South Dakota, do you guys still use horse and buggy out there? And I'm like, yes. I don't even know what I'm using to talk to you on.
They weren't serious.
Yes, they totally were.
Wow. Okay.
That was not the only thing,
yeah.
but yeah.
So,
always interesting.
So speaking of, are you ready for this segue? Are you
Sure,
ready for this
yes.
awesome segue?
I can't wait to see how you make that
Speaking
work.
of channels of communication, we're going to talk today about communicating with God, which is basically what prayer is.
Right.
And I just kind of spoiled, I guess, the question that I wanted to start with, but that's okay. When you think of prayer, Renee, what do you think of? So the title I had in mind, and the title for this episode is Prayer, period, for real, period, right?
Right.
So real prayer, because I think, again, as I said in the open, most Catholics know that, I should pray. I probably should pray more. I probably should pray better. But why don't we do it more? Why don't we do it better? I think in many cases because we're like, I don't really know what exactly, how, why, what I'm doing. I mean, I know when I go to Mass,
Right.
I can say the prayers, but I've made a distinction for a long time. It's one thing to know and say the prayers. It's another thing. It can be another thing to pray. So we're supposed to pray. So the prayers, like the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Glory Be. It's one thing to know them, memorize them. Maybe many of us did as we're kids. I can say prayers, but it's another thing to pray prayers.
Right.
So when you think of not prayers, but prayer, how would you answer that question? What does it mean to pray? What is prayer?
Well, to me, it's supposed to be like a conversation with God, not just communication, but like a conversation.
So what's
like,
the distinction?
The distinction
right there?
to me is that you don't just say things to him, but you have to listen for him too. So, which I'm not always so great at. I try to do, but to me, it's more of a conversation. Like it's supposed to be two ways.
Right.
So
prayer is a conversation. But have you always thought of prayer that way?
Oh no, I'm sure not.
Can you? So as you're thinking back, so I'll go first. Let
Okay.
you. As the extrovert, I'm unafraid to think out loud, like you introverts. So for me, yeah, the distinction I already made, saying prayers versus praying prayers, like you sort of just, to pray means to say certain words,
Right.
which I learned when I was young. That's probably how I thought of it. So have you said your prayer? We say that, right?
Right.
Have you said your prayers? And it's, I want to be very clear here. This is in no way to disparage memorized prayers.
Right.
We'll talk about this more, but to memorize a prayer is a great gift, because when I'm in a circumstance where I have a need to pray, I don't always have my own words to use,
Right.
extemporaneous prayer, if you
Right.
will. So to have words that I can fall back on, and words that are literally, in the case of the Our Father, literally
Given
God's
to us.
own.
Yes. We asked him to give us a prayer, and he did.
And he did. So maybe that's a good one to use, but I
Right.
can't think of something else. Maybe. So it's not in any way do that, but there is a way for me where even today, I can find myself at times just going through the motions, just saying the words, but not praying. So it's like, for me, it's like when piggybacking on your distinction between communication and conversation, you can tell when you're when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and they're not really present.
Like I
do
just
this
spaced out a second ago
Right.
while you were saying that.
I didn't notice because I was focused on what I was saying.
Right. But that totally happens.
Right,
yes.
totally happens. So my wife, just last night, as we were recording last night, we were talking, and I was checking something that we were talking about. I was checking on my phone, and she's still talking, and I'm doing the whole. It wasn't literally this bad, but it's kind of like the
And she's like, Chris.
Right, and she does. She's, God bless her, she's very patient with me. She doesn't She rarely actually does that. She knows he's not really paying, but I'm trying to get better. So with other people,
Right.
about being present to the person I'm in communication with,
Right.
and only when I'm present to them can I actually converse
Right.
with them.
Yeah.
So, but for me, for a long time, it was more of, to pray means it's saying certain prayers to God, usually prayers that were memorized
Right.
by me when I was young.
Right.
But Andy, for you, like what if you haven't always thought about prayer as conversation with God, what maybe had you thought of it to the degree you thought of it, but maybe what was your sort of operating understanding definition of prayer in the past?
Oh, definitely more of a find a prayer in a book and recite that one.
Right. Right.
Which I still do a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of prayer life for me. But not everybody's like that. And I'm not always so great at making up my own prayers.
Even on your own. So I think that, so I want to make a distinction. So great. Okay. So no is your answer. It's one thing for me, at least. I think there can be a progression here. So I work for the church, and well, you work for the church as well. Bill
But
works
you
for
have
the
a lot
church.
longer than I have.
But
Yeah.
it's not just that. But my job requires me to pray in front of people,
Right.
On a regular basis.
Right.
So my job required me to become comfortable with extemporaneous prayer, quote unquote, made up prayer, in front of other people.
Right.
That to me is that, but that was for me something I had to become comfortable with. That's different than just praying in my own words on my own. So even for you had said there, even on your own, when your own personal prayer where it's you and the Lord, you're not comfortable with.
I feel very inadequate to do so. I do. So I do kind of a mixture of them, and it depends on where I am and what the purpose for the prayer is. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Intercessory prayer obviously is always extemporaneous and so on. But yeah, I think I know that it's good to do a lot of kind of gratitude type prayer
Yep.
and things like that. And I'm not very good at that part.
Okay.
And I need to
You're
probably
not-
focus on that more.
You're not good at being grateful. That's what you're saying. Ryan, are you listening to that? I heard it. Did you hear it, Ryan? Ryan's
I
Renee's
try
husband.
to okay, so this is going to be kind of weird, but when you get to church and you kneel down and you say your prayers when you get there, I do always thank God for the past week, so on, but I really only do that at church, which is, I hate to admit that. We maybe should start the show over.
Stop it. Can we edit? Bill,
Stop.
erase that. No. So to be honest, so Renee, So I think it's helpful for people, because I'm going to share similar things. I think it's helpful for people to hear, because you and I work for the church, and oh my gosh, they struggled too.
Right. Well, because I've had times in my life, actually when I first started here, I actually made a conscious effort to pray every day and go over to the cathedral and do that. I've kind of fallen out of that a little bit recently, and so I know I need to get back to that. And I've tried some different things to help myself get back to that, and it just hasn't quite taken yet.
Gotcha.
But I need to get back to that, because it was really good.
That actually, just a little sneak peek. We'll be talking about that and similar things in next week's episode.
Oh, good.
Where I think it's so for me. What's been so important is to have a plan for prayer.
Right. Yeah.
And working with, so in my case, I've had a spiritual director for a long time, Father Joe Vogel. I'll actually be seeing him today.
Oh, nice.
And so to work with, whether it can be a formal quote unquote relationship, like with a spiritual director, it could be your pastor, it could be your priest, where Father, can you, like, I just want to talk with you, like, I think to come up with a plan for how I'm going to pray.
Right.
Is so important. Like prayer. So every relationship. So going back to what we said earlier and what you said, if prayer is a conversation, that means it's relational, right? And every relationship, no relationship grows by accident.
Right. Very true.
So every relationship, so I've been married to our spouses for 19 and almost 22 years. And for Jermaine and me, for our marriage to grow, for our relationship to deepen, requires intentionality. And it's not like we, yes, there are quarterly meetings where we sit down and strategize.
Quarterly marriage meetings.
Quarterly marriage strategy planning. No, I think
I
it
might
is.
like that.
Yeah, sorry, Ryan. But to be intentional about, so looking at where am I at right now? So in prayer, where do I want to be? And in conversation with others, how can I get there? So for me, this is my. I've been with the Diocese 19 years. It was within that time. It was 10 years ago this February, so almost 10 and a half years ago now, where in this building, Father Joe had a heart-to-heart with me, because we started a spiritual direction session, and so how's it going with the big guy? I think is how Father Joe often begins. It's going, pray, kind of hemming and hawing about how much I was praying.
Sure.
Well, how much you been praying? Well, on average, and it was some low. Like it may have been like my daily prayer on average was like a minute.
Oh, you're doing
60
better than
seconds.
I am right now.
Well, but Renee, I'm the director of adult discipleship
That's
and
very
evangelization
true.
at the time. And I'm at the time, like prayer was maybe a minute on average a day. And it was definitely a valley. It'd been better.
Yeah.
But I was very inconsistent in my prayer at the time. And Father Joe had we had a come to Joe moment, come to Father Joe moment, come to Jesus moment. And I had to sort of, and it's not like I hadn't made the decision, but I really had to decide and come up with a plan. This is how I'm going to, and it wasn't just me. It's again, in conversation with, in this case, my spiritual director, prayer with God, knowing myself, what works for me. So some people, here's an easy example. Some people pray at night before they go to bed. That's
Right.
when prayer is most fruitful for them.
Right.
Now for me, and I think most people, but not all people, for me, prayer is best done in the morning. So what I've been doing, and I'd already been doing it somewhat, but definitely in the last 10 and a half years, after I get ready and maybe I drive somewhere, maybe for a time I drive to the office and get here early and pray in my office. For the last several years, I've drive to my parish and pray in the chapel at my parish.
Sure.
But I had to come up with a plan on how, in light of where I'm at now, and so that evolves over time, in conversation with my spiritual director, with my wife. So talking with Jermaine, because she knows me. This is, and then elements of what prayer oftentimes should entail, like you mentioned, gratitude. But I had to come up with a plan because, again, relationships don't grow by accident.
Right.
They grow when you're intentional and purpose, and not in a really formalistic, rigid way. Just being attentive.
I think it's important for all of us to remember. We both already talked about times when we were praying a lot, and then times when we weren't. So there's these like hills and valleys of your prayer life, and that's normal.
Yep.
But we do have to find our way through that instead of just getting into a valley and just hanging out in the valley
Amen.
and never come back out.
Amen.
So that's my struggle. I made myself a plan and I just haven't done it. So how do you make that happen?
And we'll talk about that momentarily. But if you're just tuning in this into Ignition, I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, visiting today with Renee Kranz about how to really pray. That's our conversation for today. So we've been talking about how prayer is a conversation. It's part of a relationship. There's value in memorized prayers. You can also pray on your own. That can be a challenge, though, learning how to do it. And then talking about being intentional and praying and being purposeful about how we're going to pray. So I kind of shared how I had to get there 10 plus years ago. So you just said that you have a plan. It's not the
I love to make
ideation.
plans and
The
not-
ideation phase is accomplished. It's the execution phase that you're getting stuck on.
I think the problem is I have no accountability right now. So, yeah, I have a plan. I actually have an alarm that goes off every day on my phone.
Right. So that is
But I have no accountability except from God.
right. But
Apparently it's easy to ignore that sometimes because he's not, I can't see him sitting here saying to me, hey, I want to talk to you.
Right. Yep. Sometimes it's hard to hear that still small voice.
Yes.
So accountability is a great thing. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So if people, for me, it's been a spiritual director, it's been close friends, it's been a spouse. It can be, and it has been different people, and some of them remain consistent. But over the years, to have somebody else who's helping you remain true to your plan,
Right.
being an accountability partner in a sense, is such an important. I'm happy to be that for you, Renee, if you'd like.
Super. I'm going to get a text along with the alarm that goes off.
Kranz, time to pray. Now I just noticed that my texting app can allow me to schedule when it goes. So I'll just.
Well, then I'll know it's not even you. It's just some fake thing. So I can just ignore it. You should say that.
That's a good point.
So now it's going to be something different
But
every day.
now you're just going to ignore it, and then I'm going to follow up with.
Right.
But that is. Did I pre-program that too? You won't know. Maybe not. But no. So having somebody who can help us stay true. And that can be, it doesn't have to be somebody who's formally trained as a spiritual director.
Right.
It can be a good friend, somebody else who's walking the walk. And if it were you, Renee, so I've got this actually with somebody else, for a different part of my spiritual life, but I told him several weeks ago. So for me, we'll just be more honest here. It's about accountability and getting to daily mass when I can. Sure. So I often, it's so hard for me. It's a long journey to get to daily mass when you work here right next to the cathedral. So I made a commitment, in just prayer. It became clear to me that I need to take more seriously the opportunity that I have to participate in mass.
Right.
So I'd already made that resolve, but I asked somebody, hey, can you, and I told them actually, I want it to be random. Don't ask me every day. Don't ask me every week. Just on occasion. Hey, so how's the plan going? How's mass going?
Right.
So by not being regular, I wouldn't know when it'd be coming.
When they were going to come around, they're going to be like, "Why are you in your office right now? You're supposed to be at daily mass."
So I did ask a good friend just to check in with me on, because he knows I want it.
Right.
And I've got a plan, so I don't need help in the desire or the plan. And I'm pretty good in the execution, but I just knowing that there's somebody who is going to, pop his head around the corner. How's mass going? Gives a little bit extra motivation. Yeah. So it can be just a matter of to ask him, hey, just check in with me on occasion.
Yeah. And pick someone who also is good at execution where you are not maybe good at execution.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about being purposeful, accountability. I think other thing, this kind of gets into the another aspect of what I mentioned in the open, but how to actually pray. I think so, especially the extemporaneous thing. I mean, most people would know, well, I know how to say the Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be, maybe their prayers, and maybe not. I mean, that's where prayer books can be so valuable. I've got all sorts of prayer books.
I do too.
That can be valuable to help us learn those prayers. But we're talking more about the conversational, relational thing. How do we do that? And I think just for the listeners, just want to briefly talk about what I do now, and it'll speak a little bit to the evolution. So I mentioned already, right now, my prayer is I get ready in the morning. And then before I go to work, I go to my own parish, into the chapel and spend some time in prayer. For me, the time has varied, 5-10 minutes up, maybe half an hour. So right now it's about half an hour, but I can assure you, Renee, that's not half an hour of focused, in-depth contemplative prayer. I like, you hear this all the time. I, like many, the vast majority of us, I'm guessing, struggle with distraction.
Right. Oh yeah.
But that's like, I'm going to be there for about half an hour.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be. I mean, I hear a lot, like spiritual directors, spiritual writers recommend, go for 10, 15 minutes, and then see,
build on it.
And ask the Lord, what do you want me to do? I mean, don't just come up with your plan on your own. Make that part of your prayer. But so that what I do, the first thing, and this is so important, that attentiveness, so I'm on my phone with my wife that I talked about earlier. To start my prayer, it's really important for me to try to be present to the Lord. So I'm in a church. Jesus is present in the tabernacle. So to be attentive to him and ask him for the gift of prayer. I try every day. Because prayer, even it's conversation, like, well, I can have a conversation. Yeah, but prayer with God is a gift too. Right. I do have a part to play, but my part is in response.
Right.
So he initiates the conversation. So I'm asking him, start the conversation, Lord. Like, give me, I beg him, I ask him for the gift of prayer and the desire to pray. So I try to be attentive, even though all I've done this morning is probably just get ready. I haven't started my day otherwise, but at this point, just to still sort of put the rest of the day on pause and be present to him, ask him for the gift of prayer. And then I do I usually review my day before and try to look for the things that I'm thankful for. So you talk about gratitude, what I'm thankful for, and the places where he was present to me that maybe I did recognize him or not. So he's always present to us, but there's sometimes when he's more present, like waving a little bit, hey, over here. Did I see him in those times or not?
Right.
I pray for usually my family. Then I read the readings from Mass for the day and reflect on them, and then if there's still some time left, I'll pray for. Well, I pray for my colleagues, my coworkers, because some of them need a lot.
Some of us really do.
But I pray for extended family, for coworkers, friends, acquaintances, neighbors, other things like that.
Yeah.
That's the rough structure. I've been pretty rigid about it in the past. So again, it's his thing that I'm cooperating with.
Right.
So I really try to go with the flow, but I have that structure to fall back on to. If the Lord he's not like, hey, Chris, I really want you to, I've got this for you to think about, to talk about with me today, then that's kind of the flow that I've developed.
Right. What do you want from me now?
Well, thoughts on that, questions?
No, I think the what you said at the beginning, when you start asking for the gift of prayer, that's how you said it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Because usually when I go, if I go over to the cathedral, I bring a couple prayer books with me, say a few of those, but then I do a lot of just tell me what your will is. God, I'll do it if you just tell me what it is. Just tell me. I'm here. Just tell me what it is.
Right.
Crickets.
Crickets.
A lot of crickets. Right. But sometimes there is, or sometimes it comes later. It's not like he's just going to be like, okay, well, I want you to do this.
Right.
It's like more of a prayer for openness to whatever it is that he's asking
Oh, yeah.
or he wants
that's really
from
good.
me. So I do a lot of that and then some more rote prayers. Yeah, that's kind of where I go mostly.
So out of curiosity,
And intercessory prayer.
is whether it's maybe a spiritual book or the Bible, mass readings, mass prayers, is that part of your prayer routine at present?
The daily readings used to be, and I really need to get back to that. But
So let me pause you there. Why do you need to get back to that?
well, I think it's important. I like that actually helped me focus on God more throughout
Okay.
the day
Okay.
when I did that. But I love the Litany of Trust.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. We have this. Okay, this is Mom. This is your thing. How much time do we have left?
We have about 2 minutes.
Okay. So my mom always has this little blue prayer book, and it's called, I think, the Catholic Devotion or something. Grew up with that. So I've always had one. They always turn like white after several years because they're touched so much. But there's several prayers in there that we always use. My husband uses that some. And so I use that a lot, and different prayers for different things. Pray for priests, pray for my marriage, whatever. So I do a lot of that. But yeah, the readings, I need to get back to that because that, for some reason, like you get into Jesus's life and you just
Right.
are more aware of it all day.
The other thing too, I think that because it is the Word of God, for me, and it's not just for me, like it's a common a common recommendation. That actually can be the place where the Lord speaks His. So you're thinking like, Lord, what do you want me to do?
Right.
Because it's the inspired Word. That's often because the meaning of the sentence or the word or whatever, it means one thing, but there's oftentimes a deeper meaning that's just for me in
At that time,
moment,
yes.
at that time.
That's what it is. You're right. Because it just, different things will hit you differently at different points of your life.
The other thing too, why I think so, again, if prayer is going to be conversational, if it's two-way, how do I listen? Well, sometimes it's just being silent and just being open to Him speaking in my heart, in my mind, and that's something that you pick up on over time. Initially, it's really hard. Like, is this just me or is this God? So at the beginning, that's to me even more so we're reading Scripture as part of prayer because I know this is the Word of God, and I can start to over time pick up, oh, this is for me right now, today.
Right.
So, so Renee, 15 seconds. Any final thoughts?
I need to pray more.
So just to recap, folks, be attentive. It's a relationship. Ask God for the desire and maybe find an accountability partner.
Yes, for sure.
Renee, thanks for being here today.
You
Renee.
bet.
Folks, that wraps up this episode of Ignition. Again, you can email us if you have any questions about prayer. Email us ignition@sfcatholic.org, or if you have any ideas for future episodes. And until next time, may God bless you.